The year is 1588, and the stage is set for one of the most dramatic naval confrontations in history, the clash between the Spanish Armada and the English Navy. This was no ordinary battle. It was a contest for dominance over the seas, a clash of empires, and a moment that would change the course of European history forever. It was not just about military might, but also a symbolic struggle between two worlds: Catholic Spain's quest to preserve its hegemony and Protestant England's fight to defend its sovereignty and beliefs. The fate of nations and the future of Europe hung in the balance. To understand why the Spanish Armada came into being, we must look at the context of the late 16th century. Spain, under King Philip II, was the dominant power in Europe. Its vast empire spanned continents, from the Americas to Asia, fueled by immense wealth from silver and gold mines in the New World. England, on the other hand, was a rising power, led by Queen Elizabeth I. The two nations were ideological opposites: Catholic Spain versus Protestant England. Religious tension, political rivalry, and the ambitions of these two monarchs culminated in an explosive confrontation. Spain sought to assert its dominance as the guardian of Catholicism, aiming to suppress the spread of Protestantism. England, however, represented a defiant and rapidly modernizing force, keen on maintaining its independence and expanding its influence. This struggle for supremacy was as much about ideology as it was about securing trade routes, maritime control, and national pride. The friction between these two powers steadily escalated, setting the stage for one of history's most iconic conflicts. The spark for the conflict can be traced to several key events. Firstly, Elizabeth's support of the Protestant Reformation and her tolerance for English privateers, like Sir Francis Drake, enraged Philip II. These privateers disrupted Spanish shipping lanes and looted Spanish treasure ships, effectively weakening Philip's empire. Secondly, England's support for Protestant rebels in the Spanish-controlled Netherlands was seen as a direct challenge to Spanish authority. Finally, Philip's desire to restore Catholicism in England and overthrow Elizabeth, whom he considered a heretic, cemented his resolve to act. Thus, the Spanish Armada was born. Philip envisioned it as an invincible fleet that would crush the English navy, pave the way for a Spanish invasion, and secure Catholic dominance in England. The Armada comprised 130 ships, including galleons and supply vessels, and carried around 30,000 men. It was one of the largest naval forces ever assembled at the time. On the other side of the Channel, England prepared for the impending attack. Despite being outnumbered and less experienced, the English had several advantages. Their ships were smaller, faster, and more maneuverable than the Spanish galleons. The English Navy also benefited from brilliant commanders like Sir Francis Drake, Sir John Hawkins, and Lord Charles Howard of Effingham. Additionally, the English relied on a network of coastal beacons and the support of their civilian population to keep them informed of the Armada's movements. The Spanish Armada set sail in May 1588, with the grand plan to rendezvous with the Duke of Parma's army in the Netherlands. Together, they would cross the Channel and invade England. However, from the outset, the Armada faced challenges. Storms in the Bay of Biscay scattered the fleet, forcing them to regroup before continuing their mission. This delay gave the English precious time to prepare. By late July, the Armada was spotted off the coast of Cornwall. The English Navy, having been alerted, set sail to intercept them. What followed was a series of fierce naval engagements over 8 days, collectively known as the Battle of Gravelines. The English employed hit-and-run tactics, using their superior speed and long-range cannon to harass the Spanish ships while avoiding direct confrontation. One of the key moments came when the English launched fireships, old vessels set ablaze and sent drifting toward the tightly packed Spanish fleet. This caused chaos and forced the Armada to scatter, breaking their defensive crescent formation. The disarray left many Spanish ships vulnerable to English attack. Despite their determination, the Spanish Armada was ill-equipped for prolonged combat. Their heavy galleons, designed for close-range boarding actions, were no match for the nimble English ships and their long-range artillery. Moreover, the Spanish had logistical issues, including inadequate supplies and poor coordination with the Duke of Parma's forces. As the battered armada attempted to regroup, it became clear that the invasion of England was no longer feasible. Philip's grand strategy had failed. The Spanish fleet retreated northward, hoping to return to Spain by sailing around Scotland and Ireland. However, this retreat proved disastrous. Ferocious storms in the North Atlantic wreaked havoc on the Armada, sinking many ships and scattering the survivors. Of the 130 ships that had set out, fewer than half made it back to Spain. The defeat of the Spanish Armada was a turning point in European history. For England, it was a moment of triumph and national pride. Queen Elizabeth's speech at Tilbury, delivered to her troops as they prepared for the possibility of invasion, became legendary. "I know I have the body of a weak and feeble woman," she declared, "but I have the heart and stomach of a king, and of a king of England too." The victory solidified her rule and established England as a formidable naval power. For Spain, the defeat was a significant blow to its prestige and resources. While the Spanish Empire remained a dominant force for decades to come, the failure of the Armada marked the beginning of its gradual decline. It also emboldened other nations, like the Dutch and the French, to challenge Spanish authority on the seas. The long-term impact of the Armada's defeat extended beyond the immediate aftermath. It marked a shift in naval warfare, emphasizing the importance of speed, firepower, and maneuverability over sheer size and numbers. The English Navy's success inspired advancements in ship design and tactics that would shape the future of maritime conflict. But what about the myths and legends that have grown around the Spanish Armada? One of the most enduring myths is that the English victory was solely due to their superior skill and bravery. While these factors undoubtedly played a role, it's important to acknowledge the contribution of natural elements. The storms that battered the Armada were instrumental in its downfall. In fact, the English credited their victory to divine intervention, coining the phrase, "God blew and they were scattered." Another misconception is that the Armada's defeat ended the threat of Spanish invasion for good. In reality, Philip II launched several smaller armadas in subsequent years, though none achieved the scale or ambition of the 1588 fleet. The Anglo-Spanish War continued until 1604, with neither side gaining a decisive upper hand. The story of the Spanish Armada is not just a tale of ships and cannons. It's a story of ambition, resilience, and the interplay of human ingenuity and natural forces. It's a story that reminds us of the fragility of even the most meticulously laid plans and the unpredictability of history. Today, the legacy of the Spanish Armada lives on in art, literature, and collective memory. It symbolizes the end of an era and the beginning of a new chapter in European history. It was a clash not just for naval supremacy, but for the hearts and minds of a continent divided by faith and politics. As we reflect on this monumental event, we see how it shaped the destinies of nations and set the stage for the rise of the British Empire. The defeat of the Spanish Armada was not just an English victory, it was a moment that redefined the balance of power in Europe and laid the foundation for the modern world. And so, the story of the Spanish Armada reminds us of the power of determination, the influence of strategy, and the capriciousness of fate. It's a story of how the seas, those vast and unpredictable waters, can decide the fortunes of empires and the course of history itself.